So I was just browsing Twitter and saw this thing, a article by IGN that a buddy of mine, the Osseo file, I believe. I can't remember how to say his name whenever I'm not looking at it. Nice guy, decent YouTuber. He does streams from time to time. A film student. Big Star Wars fan, from what I can tell. Actually, no, he's a pretty good Star Wars fan. And he's kind of what I consider the ideal fan. He's actually smart enough to articulate his thoughts and arguments. Although I don't know if he's good in the heat of the moment. But anyway, he was quoting a article by IGN, and I will pull up the tweet now to read it. His tweet reads as follows: all my future stories will only appeal to a small, very niche audience, a small, dedicated base of readers. And I don't know if that was him like making fun of this article or whatever, or that was a genuine thought of his. If it is, I agree. You need to know your audience, and what else was it? Well, you need to know your audience and and who you're appealing to. And the article he's responding to by IGN is this: Amazon says its Lord of the Rings prequel series needs to appeal to a giant global audience. In other words, they want to appeal to everyone. And this is something that really annoys the crap out of me, especially with movie and TV adaptations. This is why I say this is why I now think movie and TV adaptations are one of the worst things that can happen to a work of fiction that start out in books or comics, because they bastardize whatever you create. This was something I learned when I first got into Game of Thrones back in 2014, I believe. Yeah, I think it was 2014. This was after Mom had moved out, and I'm sorry, I forget about that part, but yeah, it was 2014, and I was getting into the show, and I was seeing some stuff about behind the scenes, and I believe one of George R. R. Martin's, who I now consider a garbage human being, or at least a prick, who is never going to finish those books, unfortunately. But he said one of the things that as an author you worry about is in an adaptation they butcher your work, which is true. In movies they have to cut out stuff from your books to adaptate it to a movie. They have to butcher it, they have to stitch it off or amputate some stuff and then stitch on what they're going to use to what's been to the other end of what's going to stay, and they just remove stuff to be taken out because either there's no time for it, or, and this is I think a recent development that wasn't a factor at the time, it isn't acceptable to show that now. And unfortunately, Hollywood and the entertainment industry is run by a bunch of leftist douchebags who act like they're moral authority figures, who know what's best for you, and they decide, oh, you don't need to see this. We're just going to cut it out. Again, douches. Hipster douches. So, yeah, screw them. But that's not the point. The point is, I'm a writer. I would like to, hopefully I will be able to write something one day without never finishing it because I get bored. Hopefully that'll stop happening to me. But whenever something is adapted, it has to go through that butchering process. This is from what little I've been able to gather based on what I've, as an outsider looking in. They have to butcher stuff to make it appeal to that wider audience and cutouts and make it more bland. And Michael Moorcock actually had a good quote on this. I actually used this on Twitter when I was talking to Gabriel Strange. Don't know if that's his real name, but heck with it. And I just remembered this when I was sending this tweet, or when I was creating it. Michael Moorcock once said that if he was a kid now, he probably wouldn't be interested in the rock and roll metal comics because it was sort of like an outlaw genre. It wasn't for everyone. It was kind of for, well, like an outsider or someone not part of what was the conventional norm at the time. And basically he said you have to make it blander to appeal to that wider audience, and the rock and roll dies, or something like that. That is what that's my main point, is you have to butcher something or cut out all the good stuff to make it appeal to an audience of really people who either don't give a shit or people who are going to be offended regardless of what you do. And as for the offended parties, I will say this. There's one valuable lesson I learned in high school, generally from my interactions with my sister. No matter what you do, you are going to piss someone off somehow in some way, regardless of how hard you try not to. So there's no point of even trying. And yeah, so if you're worried about offending someone on Amazon, there's no point in even trying. The people who are perpetually offended deserve to be told to fuck off. Because they aren't even fans. Hell, they were the kind of people who probably bullied people who enjoyed Lord of the Rings in high school. And the impetus for all this, I will say this up front, I'm not even that big of a Lord of the Rings fan. I'm more interested in Tolkien himself. Like, I find writers who write fiction infinitely more interesting than the stuff they've written. Like, take Lovecraft, for example. I find the concepts of his stories interesting. However, I find his life infinitely more interesting. Tolkien is the same. Man fought in World War I, lost most of his friends in the war. Although most of his life apparently was like a fairy tale from what I hear. But anyway, where was I going? Oh, now I remember. Another thing is, the people they're trying to appeal to, they aren't even real fans. They're casuals. They probably didn't even give a shit about the stuff to begin with, so appealing to them is pointless. And all you're doing is really alienating or pissing off the actual fans of Tolkien, who have loved his work for years, or the work that his son Christopher published after he died. And you're just pissing people off, and this kind of seems self-destructively pointless. And again, I'm not a Lord of the Rings fan. I find some of the stuff in his lore interesting, and I can acknowledge some of the stuff he deserves credit for. I mean, his influence on like fantasy in general needs to be shown some deference. And the way he gets treated now is bullshit. But, saying all that, I do think... no, actually, screw that. I have no idea where I was going with that. The main point is, you're alienating and pissing off the people who actually like Lord of the Rings. So, and I think Raging Golden Eagle said it best, and I don't remember his exact words, so I'm paraphrasing on this, but in trying to appeal to everyone, you appeal to no one. You appeal to the lowest common denominator. Like the lowest swath of humanity, basically. You're not appealing to a large market. Like, example I would use is a comic I've been working on. It appeals to people who like science fiction and bounty hunters. That is the market it is for. This show they're working on as a prequel to Lord of the Rings, I'm assuming it's going to be more in line with the Silmarillion. I kind of hope I was hoping it would be. Because the Silmarillion has some cool stuff in it. It has stuff like Melkor, Sauron before he became Sauron. And you had stuff like Iluvatar, like good shit. I have not read the Silmarillion a whole. I still have a copy of it that I have not read since 2014 or 15. Like, I've read bits of it. But there's lots of cool stuff. It's like the Bible meets the Kalevala and the Volsunga saga. It's very interesting. And I was kind of hoping that might be what they were going for, but this just sounds like, and from what I hear, they're doing stuff that is not in line with what Tolkien would do. They're trying to inject, like, sex in it. I mean, I don't know if Tolkien was a prude, but his stories were very Bible-esque. So, and I don't think they had a lot of sex in it. I mean, sex is a natural thing, of course, and that's not really the problem. The problem is they're trying to... Well, yeah, no, it sounds like they're bastardizing his work. Unless it's an original product. Like, I admit I haven't been following it as much. I've just been hearing stories about it from time to time. But yeah, they're trying to appeal to an audience that may not even exist. The only audience they should be appealing to is the Tolkien fans, or the Lord of the Ring fans. Because there is an audience for that. Like, people bitch about The Hobbit, but it still made a good load of money. Same with the other prequel movies. Lord of the Rings, I have no idea how much money those movies made, but it sounds like they did a good job. But then again, Percy Jackson was involved, so I make of that what I will. And you can feel free to make that of what you will, and of me what you will, because at this point I really don't care what people think of me. So yeah, you can think I'm a hack on this, and I'm just saying the first thing that comes to mind, which you're not inaccurate. Like I had a general thought, and then I went up, then just went full off the reservation with it. The main point is, like, I can understand them having to take some creative liberties with this to make it appeal to modern audiences, or if they're trying to appeal to new viewers who know nothing about Lord of the Rings and are just tuning in because people are talking a lot about it. But at the same time, it feels like they're just being not edgy. I kind of like edgy, but close to edgy and not in the interesting way. Like people call Goblin Slayer edgy. I call that interesting edgy. What they're doing with the Lord of the Rings does not seem edgy, and it seems like butchering of Tolkien's work to make it appeal to the audience. And that is the problem I have with modern adaptations. That's why I say if you write books, don't go for movie adaptations or TV show adaptations. Go for comic adaptations. Like go into the indie field and make an indie comic. Don't trust any of these comic companies. Just go find an artist and work with them. Maybe have them also work to improve the stories if you thought it could deal with more improvement. And just say heck with it. Like, because if you had to tell me who I would think could probably help improve your standing in an audience, I think comics would do more, because movies are filled with people who want to inject stuff into it. I mean, the comic book industry you can say the same about, but I think if you're making an indie comic and you find the right artist and people to collaborate with you, you won't have that problem. I mean, that's one of the only positive things I can think about Elric and Melanie Benet's TV series getting canceled. I mean, I still think it was bullshit the reason they gave, saying he had too much in common with The Witcher. No, motherfucker. The Witcher stole a lot of stuff from Elric. And the fact that you booted Elric for The Witcher, whoever, that was bullshit. Bullshit center square. And I hope it comes back to bite you in the ass one day. Then again, people in the entertainment industry don't have many balls, and from what I hear, Elric has some stuff that would probably be too dark for their fragile little minds to stomach. So they're probably too weak to do it. And that's all I can really say is, yeah, movie adaptations and TV adaptations, they suck. They don't, well, not always, but recently they seem to be really sucking and injecting modern stuff into them that do not belong there. And now I just feel like I'm going on a tangent and sounding like a broken record and saying stuff I've said in the past already. So I think I'll stop here because it feels like I'm rambling. And just ask you all to have a nice day. If you want to see the Lord of the Rings TV series, I won't fault you for it. That was not the point of the video. The point was the problem I see with the entertainment industry adapting stuff from books and comics. Like, that's one of the things I'm worried about Red Hood and the Titans. Like, they already butchered Nightwing in some respect. Or they nearly did. They blackwashed Starfire, which isn't a problem, although they could have done better in the design department. They made her look like a hooker, for God's sake. And then they lied about the people having a backlash against it, saying it was about race. No, it wasn't about race. It's the fact that we've seen cosplayers put your costume department to shame. And that's not a lie. They really do. Like, cosplayers put costume designers to fucking shame, and it's almost sad. Like, I almost want to take their pride out back and give it the old Yeller treatment. And I don't mean kill anyone. I mean, like, literally, any art designer who does the kind of crap they do now and feels pride in their work, yeah, you shouldn't feel pride, especially if you work on Titans. That was an abomination. But yeah, again, it feels like I'm rambling and going on tangents here, so I think I'll call it a day now. Have a nice day. Remember, the game was rigged from the start, and goodbye.